Welcome back to the Photoshop CS5 for architecture students. Now, if we open up in the resource section, now we're going to open up raw scan presentation bottom, and we're going to open up raw scan presentation top. Okay, so first thing I want to do, you can notice that if we look at the two scans, they're in fact it's a portrait or vertical format presentation. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate them so that they're roughly in their correct orientation. Okay, now I'm going to start with the bottom section of the image first. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a bigger canvas size in order to paste in that top section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to image and I'm going to go to canvas size. Now there's a few modifiers here. You can see how it's going to increase or expand the canvas according to the dimensions we put in here. Now I want to expand the canvas upwards because we're going to be pasting to double the height here, so I'm going to make it 42 centimeters, and then I'm going to go OK, and we'll see what happens. So if I Control 0 to expand it to its extents, what you can see is that it's increased our sheet of paper per se. Now I'm going to go back to the top section through here. Now what I want to do is I want to select this area, copy it, and then paste it into the bottom section. Now I'm going to use some keyboard shortcuts. Now to select all of this image, I'm going to use the shortcut Control A. Now in a Mac that would be Command A. So I've got everything selected through here. I'm going to copy that, so that will be Control C for the PC or Command C for the Mac. So I've copied it onto the clipboard. I'm going to go to my bottom section and I'm going to paste it in, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Control V. So there you go, you can see it's pasted in that top section. Now as you can see in our layer panel over on the side, it's pasted it in as a new layer. So the new layer and the background layer can be manipulated independently. Now it's not quite in the right position yet, it's kind of overlaying part of that drawing. Now I'm going to go up to the top here to my move tool. Going to select that, I'm going to grab that top part of the image and I can drag it anywhere that I want to. Okay, so I'm going to just zoom in the middle part because that's where we need to align them. Going to grab my move tool again and then try to align it up. Now it's a little bit tricky through here, but there's a few tricks that we can sort of help us to see that we're perfectly aligned. Now if you see when I've pulled it up, there's actually part of the drawing that's duplicated in both. Now that's a deliberate thing on my behalf, so I can more accurately line one part against the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the way the layer appears, the top layer, this layer 1. Now in the layer palette or panel through here, you can see there's a pull down menu there. Now I'm going to change the characteristic of the layer, not to normal, but to multiply. Select multiply. This has the effect of turning that layer into almost like it's been drawn on a piece of tracing paper. So we can actually see what's underneath that top layer. Now as I move it, we can see how the two are going to align, and we can make a much better job of it. Now to get a bit of precision alignment, I'm not so good with my hands through here, so I'm going to use my arrow keys to nudge it into position. So I'm using my arrow key to move it right. That's looking pretty good. So I reckon that's a pretty good alignment there. Now I'm going to go back to my layer, highlight layer 1, go back to multiply and go to normal. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to have a look at that. Now the alignment actually doesn't look too shabby, so I'm going to zoom that out, and yep, I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to merge these two layers together because I don't want to keep them separate in this case because it's just one scan presentation. So up the top here there's a function key, and I can choose to flatten the image, and what that will do is it'll blend all of the layers together into the one background layer. So I'm going to flatten that image, and what you can see now is that we're back to one layer. If I try and move the image up the top, it doesn't move anymore because it's not on a separate layer. So really what we just need to do now is to trim off the excess area of our canvas. Turns out that we didn't need quite so much canvas as I thought. Now I'm going to use the crop tool again because I want to show you another little trick. Okay, now that's roughly got my crop tool aligned there. Now I'm going to use my plus and minus keys because you'll notice if I go to my magnifying glass, it'll ask me if I actually want to finish the operation, but I don't want to finish the operation. I want to keep sort of manipulating it, but I can't quite see what's going on there. So in this case I'm going to have to rely on my keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to go Control plus, plus, plus to zoom in. I've got my spacebar down, that gives me a pan, and I can then navigate to the top. Now in the control line through here you can see there's an option called perspective in the crop tool. Now this is a fairly clever feature in CS5, and I'll show you what it does, because when I've scanned this image it hasn't scanned the sort of outer edges perfectly. It's actually a little bit out of square. So I'm just going to, when I've got the perspective operation on, I can actually distort the cropping window. I'm not having to actually do it like a rectangle, and you can see it quite clearly here because if we look at this bottom line here, it's actually not straight. It's not cropping in a rectilinear manner, it's cropping in a rhomboid. So I'm going to go to this corner here, try and get that as close to that corner as well as I can. There we go. I'm going to pan up, shift key down, and there we go. So I'm pretty close to that border. I'm going to go Control 0, and that will bring me out. And what you can see, what will happen here is when I press Enter, not only will it crop the image and get rid of the excess, but it'll also crop it to a rectangle, so it's in effect fixed up the sort of distortions in perspective to give us a nice crisp rectangle through there. Now once we've got those two images blended, we can then go through the same procedure as we did in the video cleaning up scanned drawings. So that's the slightly more complicated way of combining images, but it's good to know and good to see how these different processes work. Now I'm going to save this image. I'm going to save it as, so I'm going to say composite presentation, okay, and save that and go OK. So now I'm going to close off my open windows. Now we're going to do this again, but in a slightly different way. So I'm going to open up my bottom scan again, but I'm going to open, notice I'm opening bottom 1 and top 1. There we go. There they are side by side. Okay. Now there's some pretty clever sort of automated functions in Photoshop, and we're going to try the photo merge function to try and bring these two images together. So what I'm going to do, under the File pull down of the application, we're going to go to Automate. And you see in the flyout under there, there's a function called Photo Merge. Let's select that. Okay. So it'll open up a dialog window through here. Now, because we've got our two candidate files open here, I'm going to select the option Add Open Files. So there's our two files there. I'm going to let it figure out itself how to put them together, and all I'm going to do is press OK, and let's see what the computer does, because what it will do is in some senses do the same operations we did manually, but do it automatically. So what it's doing is that it's creating a new file, and it's going to sample and bring the two source files together in that new file. So it's thinking a little bit, because it's a fairly complicated operation, but it hasn't done such a bad job in the end. You'll notice though that if we look in the layers palette, it's still two layers. Now I'm going to just rotate this the right way, counterclockwise. Just going to look at how the seam came together. It's good, but it's not brilliant, so I'm going to use the Move tool. I'm going to select the top one. I'll select the top one in the Layers panel. Use the Move tool, and I'm not going to move it, I'm just going to nudge it with my arrow keys a little bit. Okay, I'm going to pan across, have a look at the other side. That's not too bad. So I'm going to zoom out to the extents. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to flatten that new image. So there we go. There's the new image created through Photo Merge. And again, we can do the same process with the crop tool. I'm going to find myself up there. Don't forget, I've got the perspective box ticked, which allows me to distort that bounding box like a rhomboid, so it's not like a rectangle anymore. It's pretty close. It's looking good. Going to pull that out a little bit more there. Yep, looking good. Scroll up through here. Brilliant. Okay, press enter, and we shall get Control 0 to bring us back. Pretty much the same image as we did the hard way. Now it's up to you how you want to choose to do this. Stick around. We've got two more presentations in this introductory section. The next one is going to be saving the files and image file formats and rules of thumb about saving files, and after that we're going to go through some presentation styles to whet your appetite as to sort of how to go about doing your own presentations. So stick around.